Okay, so today we're going to look at another bone of the skull, the sphenoid bone. And this one relates to vision in that the sphenoid bone, it goes across it's right in the middle of the skull. You can touch it at the sides of your temple and here, and it's a singular bone that it sits right in the middle. It has a little cradle in it. In fact, let's look at a picture of it. I might share my screen and go straight into this. The sphenoid bone. It's the most remarkable bone. Right in the center of things. And this one relates to vision. Whereas last week we were doing the temporal bone, which related to hearing. This one, there's the sphenoid from below. It relates to vision in that it forms the back of the eye sockets. It's curious also in that it forms the base part of the base of the skull in the front here, and it also forms the top of the back of the nose. So it's this bridge between the front of the body and the cranium, or the front and the back of the body in a way. And it's got the most amazing shape, shaped like a butterfly or a bat or a moth. And it sits in front of the point of support. You remember, here is the point where the skull balances on the spine. Here is the ear canal, and in here is where you find the semicircular canals. There we are. Where you find the semicircular canals that, in here. So the center of gravity of the skull is up in here. Point of support is there, center of gravity of the skull is here, so the skull is constantly moving, and the sphenoid bone is in front of that. And let's look at another view of it. It's curious if it's highlighted in blue up here. That's the sphenoid bone. So if you take everything out of the body, when you're looking from the ground up, you can see this little bone. Watch, if we go through the skeleton now, there it is there, sphenoid bone. It's the very, if it's the whole internal cavity, it's the roof of the back of the nose. So as we come forward now inside the pelvis and then inside the rib cage, we might just go straight ahead here up into the throat, and there's the hyoid bone, why is that not doing that? Oh, manubrium. Oh, right. There we are. Here is the hyoid bone. And here's the sphenoid. So you can see, there's the hard palate, both jaws, the upper jaw. It's the palatine bone. And behind there, this is bones of the nose in here, but, behind that is, the breath comes in, touches the back of the throat and comes down here into the throat. So it's going right across this bone here. And if we take another view, so here's the sphenoid bone here. Now this one, I've taken away the visceral skull. That's the nose and both jaws. So we've got the skulls divided up into two parts. There's the cranial skull and the visceral skull. So you can see this is the back wall of the eye sockets here. The frontal bone here, that forms the top and part of the back. There's a little gap here. That's where the ethmoid bone goes in. We're going to look at that one next week. And then the sides of the eye sockets are created by the zygomatic bone, which is the cheekbone. Note the cheekbone also joins on here and becomes part of the temporal bone. And then next to that sits the sphenoid bone. And if we remove the frontal bone, we can get a sense of the amazing shape of this structure. And here's the sphenoid bone here. And note, it joins onto the temporal bones at the side there. Because it's central, it's got all these different connections. And the thing about the skull is, it's, the base, this forms part of the base of the skull. In fact, let's go back and put the frontal bone back. There we go. It forms part of the base of the skull. So if I remove, then we have the occipital bone on the base, and we have the sphenoid bone, and we have the two temporal bones, and we have the frontal bone. But the frontal bone, the sphenoid bone, and the temporal bone form most of the base. And there is a solid bone, singular bone. Whereas you have the temporal bones and the parietal bones that are on the side. So all the bones of the skull, they have this capacity to move. Not much, it's not you can look at the joints. They hardly move at all. But it has the brain floating inside the cerebrospinal fluid in there. And if I remove the parietal bones here, we can see the spaces inside the brain. Now, here's this is the sphenoid, and this is the temporal bone, and that is where the midbrain sits in here. And this little thing in here is the sella turgica, the Turkish saddle, the pituitary gland sits down in there. It's like a little pea that extends down below the brain. It has its own little hole in here. Now, if we remove the frontal bone, and maybe if we remove the zygomatic bones too, and maybe the temporal bones, we can see the base, the sphenoid bone, how it sits with the back of the skull. Now, and maybe I'll remove that. We can see the actual shape of this bone. Isn't that amazing? You can look at the way the joint flares under here to form part of the base. And this joint's just below the teeth. So if you put your fingers at the back of your teeth on the top jaw, that's where this butts up against. And we have tubes that this is the back wall of the eyes here, and have these foramen through here that the optic nerve and variety of structures pass through. This is looking from the side. And in fact, let's put and this is from below. That's the back wall of the nose that comes down and becomes the throat. Now, oh no, let's get the whole skull. So look at that bone there. Find your frontal bone. That's the forehead here. Move your fingers back slowly and find that joint here. And go sideways. Feel the size of the frontal bone. and come right down to the side till you're at the sides of the eyes, and see if you can feel the joint along here. If you press now, actually, if we look, there's a lot of muscle in here. There's one muscle that goes from the front fork of the lower jaw here, temporalis, and it goes right up over like this, over the temporal bone. Very strong muscle. And then from the jaw, you have this muscle called the masseter, which joins onto the zygomatic arch on the back and on the inside. So it's really solid in here with muscle, which you can feel when you're feeling your temple and the cheekbone. But if you come inside there, you can begin to feel this, and you can feel these ridges along here and along to the point where it joins in with the temporal bone there. It's pretty small. This looks pretty big here, but you know, consider where your cheekbone is and the top of the eye. It's a small space in there. But the thing is, if you're holding both sides, it goes to both sides of the skull. It's a singular bone, like the frontal bone and like the occiput at the back. And the thing is, this with these singular bones, the thing with the skull, as we'll really see next week, is all the other bones move around it, particularly in the face. Everything can open and close. And it opens around this sphenoid bone. So it has this really significant place. And, you know, often we think of our head and we think of it as just being this solid thing, you know, our head and our neck. But it's, you know, it's really interesting in that we've got two parts. There's the cranial skull, and there's the central nervous system going down through the spinal cord. So there's the skeleton and the skull. But in the front of the skull, the front half of the skull, it's a space. And you've got the throat, and it goes right down into the tube of the cavity of the torso. So it's this space in here, and it's this sphenoid bone floats on top of that. And so remember, with head balance, it's this movement of the head forward and up. And when it's coming up like this, it's the matter of sensing the space right through the whole head, neck, and torso. So remember, these joints, the position of the head here, you might want to remind yourself, because I'll keep referring to the names. It won't matter because I'm going to get you to be feeling it anyway. But remember, this is the frontal bone. Goes right across, and it's got that joint across the top there. And the two parietal bones at the side has that curve across here. And, you know, goes right across the back. And if you're lying on your back, you know, you're rolling across the back of your head, depending on which part of your head is lying on the floor, how arched your neck is. You're probably going to be rolling when you roll across the back of the head onto the parietal bone. But if your neck's pretty flat, you may be rolling onto the temporal bone at the back here. So that's the occipital bone. So most they'll refer to the occipital bone and the temporal bone. And when we have our hands, I'll get you to put your hands underneath the ears. That'll be there, and then you'll feel the bump here with the one finger, and I'll get you feeling the front of the cheekbone here. Notice the eye sockets here. The top, it's the frontal bone. The bottom, it's the maxilla, the upper jaw, and the zygomatic bone that forms this eye socket. And then here, this joint in here, this sphenoid bone. So, let's see where this takes us. It offers an opportunity to lengthen in a really different way. So, could you lie down on your back? Oh, and you'll need some wall again today. So, you know, find a good bit of wall that you can roll against. And then lie down on your back. So lie down here on the floor. And notice the parts of you that are in contact with the floor. The parts that are held away. And how you settle as you relax. And remember this, because we're going to do the same thing against the wall soon, and you can compare them. You know, notice the feeling in the back of your neck. And any differences to the contact to each side, whether one side feels heavier. And begin to roll your head. Slowly, slowly. So that you could feel the shape of the back of your skull. And the contours, the bumps, the surface of the back of your head that you're rolling on. And feel the weight of your skeleton. In fact, leave your head there for a moment. Just feel the weight of your skeleton on the floor. The weight of your central nervous system. And the weight of your organs. And now place your middle fingers beneath your ears. And the first finger just on that bumpy bit at the back of your head, and the third finger just on the beginning of your cheekbone. So you're holding on to the temporal bones here at the sides of your head. And let your arms relax so you feel the weight. And begin to roll your head slowly side to side. Once again, feeling the bumps, the contours. Of the occipital bone, the back of your head here, and it's also the base of the skull that joins onto the spine. So as you're rolling your head, you're feeling your neck turn. And of course, you're holding on to the temporal bones with your fingers that contain the inner ears. Forms the sides of the skull, part of the sides of the skull, and a part of the base of the skull. And maybe as you're rolling your head, and if you roll a little bit further, you may feel a bit of a bump when you come to a joint, and it's either going to be the temporal bones, or it's going to be the bones that sit above that, the parietal bones, the two bones at the sides of your head. See if you can feel that moment when you meet that ridge between those bones. And of course, the more you allow yourself to relax, the easier that is. And now, as you're rolling your head, lift one knee up, stand the foot on the floor, and then lift the other and stand the foot on the floor. And begin rolling your pelvis with your head. Just a tiny movement. But so you could feel the weight of your skeleton rolling on the floor. And as you relax and your breathing slows down, notice if it becomes easier to feel the weight of your skeleton. Now leave that, let your legs be long. And your arms. Notice your breathing now. So you have the weight of your skeleton, but there is also the three-dimensional shape of your torso, your head, neck, and torso, moving as you're breathing. Well, now, could you place your fingers now on the eye sockets, the sides of your eye sockets? You can feel down to the beginning of the cheekbone. That bone's called the zygomatic bone. But if you push in a little bit into the temple, you can feel the muscle that joins the lower jaw onto the skull. And behind that you have the sphenoid bone. One bone that traverses both sides of the skull, right in the middle of your skull. And feel around there. See if you can feel, if you press and move your fingers slowly, the joints where the sphenoid bone joins onto the frontal bone, the forehead bone, and behind where it joins onto the temporal bone. And the sphenoid bone here, it forms the backs of your eye sockets. So the eyes sit in front of this bone. And if you extend your one finger down and you hold on to, put it just behind the top teeth, at the back of the top teeth, that's where the bottom of the sphenoid bone comes down to, right behind the maxilla. And it forms the top of the back of the nose. So when you're breathing in, you're breathing across the bottom of the sphenoid bone. And at the top of the sphenoid bone, you've got your brain. Now roll your head slowly side to side. And feel how the sphenoid bone moves. Top of your nose. The connection between the central nervous system and the space inside the mouth and nose and down into the tube of your gut. You could let your arms down and continue rolling your head, thinking of this bone that's in front of the center of balance of the skull. And imagine that you were inside your body and you could look up through the center of the body, up through your throat and your mouth and nose, and you could see the sphenoid bone, shaped like a butterfly. Now notice where you're looking. Where are you looking as you're moving side to side? Can you look forward? Look forward and keep looking forward as you roll your head. Looking forward as you roll your head. So your head is rolling to each side and your eyes are actually moving in the opposite direction. There are 6 muscles around each eye. And as you're rolling your head and looking forward, those 6 muscles of the eye are enabling them to keep looking forward. And notice that your head is rolling in a bit of an arc. You know, it's not rolling straight across. And it's a pretty interesting arc because you're probably rolling across the part in the back of your head where all the muscles in your neck and from your back and your shoulders connect onto the skull. So if you keep tuning into that, you know, you can feel all the muscle being moved down the sides of your neck to your shoulders and down into your back as you go in each direction. But you also have this curious sensation of your eyes sitting in front of the sphenoid bones, floating in fluid. And as you relax your tongue, and as you think of the space in your nose, does it become easier to keep your eyes relaxed? You could imagine you were floating in space. You know, floating above a planet that was covered in, had a misty atmosphere. And you're trying to work out where is a safe place to fly down and land on the planet. Maybe take your fingers and place them on the sphenoid bones, just behind the eye sockets. Still looking straight ahead. You know, you're feeling the sphenoid bone, because in order to intuit what's going on down on the planet there, you probably need to use all your senses, your nose, gut instinct. And just look and listen with your whole body as you float down. Float through the mist and perhaps into a beautiful forest. And lift your knees one at a time as you float down into this forest, and lift both knees, stand the feet on the floor, and as you're floating through the forest, maybe you could roll your pelvis a little bit to move over a branch. And, you're rolling your head and your pelvis in order to navigate through the canopy of these trees. tuning in with all your senses to the space inside your body as you roll. And then find a clearing and then float down onto the ground and let your arms and legs be long and relax. I always find when I visit another planet that it's good, just like when you meet a dog, you give it your hand to smell you first, just to lie here and let the creatures and the vegetation in the forest feel where you are. So we're lying on the ground in this beautiful forest, and the roots of all the trees are underneath us. And as the trees read who we are, allow your senses to expand so you can sense where you are and feel it through the space in your body. Once again, begin to roll your head slowly side to side. Feeling the volume of your skull. And the space throughout your body. The space below the sphenoid bone. The cavity inside the head, neck and torso. And along with the weight of your skeleton. And now leave that movement with your head and slowly roll over onto your side and come up to stand and walk over to a wall. And stand here. Stand here against the wall. Just notice facing the wall how it feels. And imagine this wall is actually a giant tree. Could you put your forehead on the tree? Place your forehead against this tree. And notice what you need to do to relax here. Maybe place your fingers, the middle finger underneath your ear and the first finger on that bump at the back of your head and the third finger on the beginning of the cheekbone. And now slowly roll your forehead over the wall, over the tree, side to side. And feel the shape of your forehead. The particular bumps and contours here. And notice what you're doing in order to do this smoothly. To roll your head, your neck is turning. But what's happening through the rest of your body? The more you can soften through your shoulders and arms, through your pelvis and legs, the more you'll be able to feel your body adapt. And make small adjustments so that you could really listen to what you can feel with your head. Like you're tuning into this, to the wall, as if it were a living tree that could communicate something to you, maybe peace. And notice the way your pelvis can turn. As you roll your head, or your rib cage and shoulders. And if you roll your head further around onto the sides, we get over the sides of the eye sockets there. What you have to do with your shoulders and your arms. And think of the length, right through the front of your body, from your head right down to your feet. There's the sense of the space in the front of your body, but of course you're holding on to the sides of your neck here. You're holding on to the temporal bones with your fingers. Feel the sides of the skeleton, the weight of your skeleton going right down to the floor. And now move your fingers to the temples. Feel the sphenoid bone now. And consider the back of the eyes. Allow your eyes to relax. And the space below the sphenoid bone, the top of the back of your nose, down through the throat and right through the cavity of your torso. And sense the length of that. Let your knees go so your belly can hang. Everything can lengthen right through your torso. Maybe you feel your knees relax and the front of your feet spread, your toes soften on the floor. Maybe it's easier to let one knee bend at a time, to feel that whole length of the front of your body. Notice as you relax your tongue, think of the space in your nose. The front part of your skull and its connection to all the organs. And then leave that, come away from the wall again. Just stand there and notice what you feel, how you stand there now. Sense of your skeleton, the weight of your skeleton. A sense of the space inside your body. And now stand with your back to the wall. And move back so you stand with your back against the wall. And notice how it is. Don't force anything, really just let yourself be here. So you may notice that the pressure on each side of your body is different. Your head may be away from the wall, and maybe one shoulder isn't even on the wall, or you just feel your shoulder blades or something. Or you feel one side of your pelvis rolled over. Don't force anything. Let yourself just be wherever it's comfortable, just resting against the wall lightly. And, the way that you're standing here, the way you're balanced against the wall is perfect for the current organization of all the muscle and fascia, for the way you're organized at the moment. You may be more prepared to turn to the left than to the right. That may be the best organization for you to get through life at the moment. But watch what happens now if you really just let your legs soften. Like really pay attention to your legs. Think of your knees relaxing. You sense the weight on your feet. You could even just let your legs bend just a little bit and then straighten them a little bit so that you're sort of you're moving the skeleton inside the suit of skin. Your skin is still in contact with the wall, but you can feel your skeleton just make the smallest movement inside that skin. And then leave that. Notice if that made a difference. And now move your head back toward the wall slowly and then bring it back forward. Slowly back to the wall and bring it forward. And notice as you do that, where is your head going? Is it going to the middle or is it going over to one side? And next time you have your head there, leave it there. Leave the back of your head against the wall and notice, is this easy or does it feel like you need a bit of force to hold it there? And roll your head slowly, just a few times to feel the bumps here. But notice, to hold your head here, are you needing to brace yourself somewhere in your shoulders or your neck? Well, leave that. Bring your head away again. Now, leave your head away. Move the pelvis away from the wall and then bring it back slowly. The pelvis away from the wall. So just your rib cage is sitting against the wall now. Moving the pelvis and notice how it moves. What's the first and the last parts of your pelvis to leave the wall, and the first and the last parts to come back down. And there's another aspect to this sense from your rib cage down to your feet. As your pelvis moves away from the wall, then you have that connection from rib cage to feet. When your pelvis comes back, it changes because the hips, the knees, and each ankle all move. And are you sensing that at the back of the legs? Or are you also sensing it at the front? Well, place your fingers on the temples there, on the sphenoid bone, the sides of each eye socket. And now think of the front, the inside, below the sphenoid bone. Remember, above the sphenoid bone, you've got the brain. Below the sphenoid bone, you've got the top of the nose, the back of the nose, and that space that goes all the way, that's the back of the throat. Goes right down into the torso. So feel as you're moving your pelvis away from the wall and back to the wall, right around your body. So, right around the pelvis and rib cage. You could think of the length from this bone that you're touching now right down to your feet, just like the feet are lengthening away from the rib cage, and the head is lengthening away from the rib cage too. There's that sense of the point of contact is what you're sensing everything lengthening away from. And move your head and your pelvis away from the wall and toward the wall at the same time. Feel them both in relation to the rib cage. And let them come back in whichever way. Maybe you're still over on the left side of the rib cage or something, or, one particular part. And it may only be one side of the head or the pelvis. Let it stay there, but just really tune in and feel, can you move together? Can you touch the wall and move away from the wall at the same time? And let your arms down. Just rest against the wall. How is that? Now try moving your head back to the wall and away from the wall. Just see, is that different now? Is it moving in a different place? Well, keep your head against the back of the wall and roll it slowly side to side over the occipital bone. And consider, the shape of the back of the head, the roundness of the back of the head. As you roll to each side, think it's like a quarter circle from one side to, from one ear through to the back of the head, and then the other ear to the back of the head. And that quarter circle extends all the way down through the neck, through the whole body. Notice as you roll your head, whether you feel the quarter circle of your rib cage on that side also begin to roll a little. Well, leave your head and just roll your pelvis side to side. And think of each quarter circle from the sacrum round to each hip. And as you roll your pelvis from side to side, what do you feel right through that quarter circle in the rib cage and the quarter circle in your neck and your head? Maybe roll your head with your pelvis. Oh, you could roll the rib cage too. You might as well, and just feel the round shape, from your pelvis, rib cage, and the back of your head. Right down to your feet. As you roll to one side, that knee bends, and the weight shifts on each foot. And of course, as you roll onto the rib cage on that side, maybe you need to move your shoulder a little bit. Leave that for a moment, come away from the wall and just notice how it is. That's interesting, isn't it? Now, come back to the wall, just rest against the wall. Notice how you rest there now. Is it different from the way you rested before? Where is your head relative to the wall? Let your head come back. touch the wall a few times and just feel that. See if that's easier. And now hold on to the sphenoid bone. Go to the sides of the eye sockets. Feel the shape around there. See if you can feel, just move your fingers slowly and feel where the sphenoid bone joins onto the frontal bone. That's your forehead at the side. And then if you go further back, it joins onto the side of the temporal bone. And then at the lower down, you'll feel the cheekbone, but the sphenoid bone extends down there behind the top teeth. You could maybe put your thumb or one of your fingers behind the top teeth. So you're holding your sphenoid bone here, and think right down the front of your body. And turn your head. And of course, when you're turning your head, you have to turn your arms, which is moving your rib cage. Well, leave your rib cage where it is. Just turn your head, which means, your shoulder girdle will slide. Means, one elbow is going to lengthen away. Shoulder will slide around the ribs. And the other one will move closer to the spine. In fact, just move your elbows a little bit. Stay with the head, just move your elbows and feel the way your elbows, the whole arm can move here. Slowly, so you can, it's in harmony with your breath. And, do it in a way that you could keep your mouth soft, your tongue and your nose soft, your eyes open and relaxed, your eyes sitting in front of the sphenoid bone. And now turn your head and look, but think of everything being able to lengthen, expand, the space inside you. And even as, it's just your head and your chest, you're rolling, probably you can feel that right down through the front of your body and right down into your feet, your legs. Could roll your pelvis too. Roll yourself side to side on the wall. Let your arms down. Keep doing that, rolling yourself side to side. And rest, leave that. Come away from the wall now, just stand here. Notice the feeling inside you. Sense of the weight of your skeleton down onto the whole of each foot. And the space inside. The space inside the senses. Eyes and the nose. Your ears. Once again, turn around to face the wall. And place your forehead on the wall once again. And compare how this feels now to when we did it a while ago. Notice the sense of the space through the whole front, inside of your body, and how that, influences the feeling in the legs. Now roll your forehead side to side. right onto the side of your head in each direction. You let your feet stay where they are, but you're rolling your head right to the side and allow everything to adjust. So, one knee bends and your pelvis will turn. Certainly your rib cage and your shoulders are turning. And if you can allow everything to be long and soft, it'll be really smooth. Imagine if you're in that forest, a beautiful forest in that planet that we've landed on. And now you could come up and you could roll your forehead on the tree, standing on its roots. What could you communicate? Could you do this movement in a way that you would radiate love or peace? In a way that enabled you to feel what's going on through the forest. And, as you roll to one side, lift the arm on that side up. So you have the sense of your arms being outstretched in each direction. The sense of being able to effortlessly open from the inside, from the sphenoid bone, down through the back of the nose and the throat into the whole torso, and right down into the pelvis, through the legs. So you lengthen the arms and you lengthen the legs and the torso. You just let everything extend through the skeleton itself and through the spaces. And now roll around onto the back once again, the back of your head on the wall, and just rest against the wall for a moment. And notice what you feel now. How you can rest against there. Can you have your head against the wall and rest there? And now extend your arms forward. Experiment with just sensing the length. You could roll yourself slowly side to side, but extend your arms wherever it feels comfortable, but in a way that enables you to feel their length. Do you know that the span between each arm when they're outstretched is the same as your height? So think of reaching as you roll. And in fact, you could roll right over. Roll right around, in fact, your rib cage. Extend through your arms and your legs. Extend through your whole body and roll around your rib cage. And allow yourself to soften. Allow yourself to adjust the way you move so that you can find a way to roll around the particular contours of your body. You might be reaching down with your arm or up or out. You might turn one leg in or out. Really let yourself feel the full space inside you. Yeah, and you could roll on your rib cage. You could roll on your pelvis, around the pelvis. But it's this idea of sensing both the weight of the skeleton, down through the sides of the skull from the temporal bones, down to the feet, out through the arms, And also from the front of the skull, from the visceral skull, from the sphenoid bone down, through the spaces in the head, neck and torso, to allow the whole of your body to be open and long and soft and open. You know, you could take a larger step and roll across the wall. You know, sweep across the wall with your large, you know, spacious arms, soft eyes, soft mouth and tongue. And then come back and rest against the back of the wall. Notice where you're looking. Look from side to side with your eyes. Feel them moving in front of the temporal bones. It's the sphenoid bones. And now roll around on your head, just to feel the difference, how you can turn yourself around your head, how smoothly you can organize your weight. Particularly if you keep your eyes soft. Eyes and your tongue and your nose. And then come away from the wall and just stand here. Think of that space within you. The weight of your skeleton and that place at the top of your head where if you were going to leave the planet now, you stand in this forest, done your work here, and you just begin to lift off slowly through the trees. You're going to feel which part of your head will lift up first. And of course it's moving, the head is balanced on top of the spine. And you could slowly walk now. You know, and maybe as you fly through the mist and out into the outer atmosphere of the planet, you could lie down on your back now just to feel the difference and to prepare for the long journey back to Earth. So lie down on your back and notice your contact with the floor now. That's pretty different, isn't it? There's the sense of maybe you're more even and the weight of your body, but there's also the sense of the space of your volume and the lightness of movement right around your whole body, particularly in the head, neck and torso. And maybe, feel the eyes in front of the sphenoid bone. Then roll over onto your side and come up to stand. Slowly. Notice how it is. Sense of weight and space. And when you're ready, try walking. And notice if it's easier to have that sense of everything being long and open.